Hey everybody, it is Adele Frizzell here and
Tiffany here. Nice to see you guys or be here today.
yeah, hopefully with some people joining us, we sent out an email blast and we're here to talk about how hard should you train in order to get the results you want in the gym. And some people think, well, yeah, hard, duh. Actually, there's some science behind this. So we're going to talk about the RPE scale, the RIR scale, what we recommend for clients. Of course, it's nuanced. And this piggybacks on our call last week. What was our call last week about?
Last
I
week
know
we
I'm
were
drawing a blank, but it was like,
no, it was last week we talked about training frequency and what that would look like for each individual person.
oh yeah, right. And how often you should train a muscle in order to optimize and get the results you're seeking. Okay, so we're piggybacking on that. We're talking about how intensely you should train, how hard you should train in the gym. And this is because we want you to train hard, but we also want you to train smart. So you're not just spinning your wheels in the gym, looking the same after a year, putting all that time in and not getting results, because that sucks, right? I mean, working out is great. You feel good. You get those endorphins. It helps your mental health and everything. For some people, they call the gym their therapy. But let's face it, we do want to see changes. We want to
Yeah.
see improvements. Yeah.
I don't think that we would get as many endorphin releases if we were just staying stagnant all the time. I think that it would become frustrating versus empowering,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. Yeah. So how hard should you train? We're also going to be talking about your core and strengthening your core. We're going to just touch on that in today's Facebook Live. It was a request from Maureen. Hopefully, Maureen, you're on this call. But we're going to go and take a deeper dive in next week's Facebook Live on your core, because we just don't have time to do justice to that topic today.
It's a
Okay.
pretty big topic.
Yeah, exactly. So have we got anyone tuning in for today's Facebook Live?
Patty is on. Patty says hello.
Patty,
Hello, Patty.
you beautiful woman, you. Thanks for being here again. So let us chat first about the RPE scale, because that's what we use with clients.
Yeah, so I think first it's important for everyone to understand what the RPE scale is. And there's actually two different scales. There's the RPE and the RIR scale. So it can get kind of confusing, but at the end of the day, they're really very similar in what they're rating. So the RPE is the rated rate of perceived exertion. How tired are you when you're done? And the RIR is how many reps do I have left in reserve? Reps in reserve. In our training program, we kind of do a combination of both of them. We're wanting you to ask yourself how exhausting was this training for me? Did I complete it to where I felt as if I had 1 or 2 reps in reserve, or did I have 20 reps in reserve? Was the weight way too light? So by dialing in on how many rates or reps in reserve you have, or how exhausted you felt after a training session, we can really help determine what an appropriate weight would be for you, or an appropriate rep range, because the two work together. Sometimes you can have lower weight and higher reps, and sometimes you can have higher weight and lower reps. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, it's flexible. So we're going to show you a graphic, which I think will help. But, you know, the RPE scale, when I took kinesiology 25 years ago, this is what we focused on, the rating of perceived exertion. And it's a scale from 1 to 10. And you could apply it to running or other types of training, swimming, competitive, like when you're training. And you know, there are zones, I guess, green, yellow, red, and you don't always want to be training in red, because you're not going to recover. You're more prone to injury. And what are some other reasons why you might not always want to train in red? I think really it comes to recovery and injury, right?
Yeah, it's very stressful on your body.
Very exhausting. You want to train in different zones, green, yellow, and red. Okay, so think of running. You might have high intensity sprints You might have long, slow duration runs, and you might have moderate intensity, which would be your yellow, where you may be doing hill loops and then back and resting, and then hill loops and then back and resting. But how does this apply to the gym? We're still using a scale of 1 to 10. And in our experience, a lot of people who are new to training really don't know, like they feel like, well, that was effortful, but they don't have an idea of like, how would I actually rate that on a scale of 1 to 10? And we want our clients to get used to that, because ideally we want them working at a 7, 8, or 9.
And a lot of times we have people come to us saying, well, I'm working at a 9, but whenever you really push them, come to find out what they thought was a 9 is more along the lines of a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
And it's all about understanding yourself and understanding what you're capable of in order to see what else you can do.
Yeah. For example, I don't enjoy working out my back. I will hold myself back. I know I hold myself back a little bit. One day I've been at like probably doing lat pulls of 120 for the longest time. Like, okay, I'm going to move the pin 130. Okay, I did it 140. Okay, I did it. Like, how long was I holding myself back on that? You know, no, it's not surprising that my back is probably one of my weakest muscle groups. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys the scale you see here, and let us know if you have any questions in the comments. This is the RPE scale. Can you see it, Tiffany?
It looks like it's loading on my screen. Yep, we're good. It's up.
Okay, so this is a rating of perceived exertion, which you could also apply to reps in reserve. Basically, you can see we're at yellow, orange, and red. Okay, we want our clients working in the yellow, orange, and red zone. Yellow means if you were said, you know, I could probably have gotten 3 more reps. Like, let's say you're doing dumbbell curls. I could have done 3, maybe 3 more. You'd give yourself a 7 for that exercise. If you could have squeezed out 2 more, an 8. If you could do 1 more, a 9. Okay, now if you're like, gosh, I don't know if I could have even gotten 1 more, maybe you're a 9.5. A 10, there is no way on this earth you could have done 1 more rep. And let's explain what a 10 would be. There's 2 types of failure. So basically the idea is if you had gone for an 11th rep, you would have failed. You could not have executed it. There are 2 types of failure. So that would be called training to failure if you tried to do an 11th rep. We don't want you doing that. But let's explain what those failures are. They are mechanical and they are technical. And a lot of people think only mechanically. Like, there is no way you would have lifted it and you would have dropped the weight. Could not have finished it. That's mechanical failure. Physically, you could not have finished it. But there's also technical failure, and people need to really pay attention to this one. Do you want to chat about that, Tiffany?
Yeah, so technical failure is when you lose form. And the problem with losing form is you might think, well, I muscled it up anyway. Okay, well, that's cool. You muscled it up. But what was the benefit of muscling it up like that? What good did it do you? I'll tell you some bad that it did for you. It possibly increased your chance of injury because you're no longer following proper movement patterns. You're also changing the dynamics on the joints. There's just a lot of things that's happening there, and you're increasing your risk for injury whenever you're trying to push it past value, when your form is starting to collapse.
Yeah. I'm thinking like if you were doing a dumbbell curl, now you're no longer straight, you're bending, you're like, oh, you now you have to recruit your back and your hips, and it just looks messy.
Yeah,
right?
And then you're not even using that muscle anymore that you're trying to
Right. In order to get it up, you start bucking and you using all these other muscles, right? And like you said, increasing your chance of injury. So not a good idea. It happens frequently where people feel like they have to train to failure, and it gets so ugly at the end. And that's just what we call ego lifting, right? You're getting the extra rep just so you can count extra reps. or maybe because you want to go up in weight and you pick a higher weight than you can do with actually good form, and it's just a mess. So we are strict on form.
Yeah, form is key. Form is king. If you cannot do a exercise with full range of movement while maintaining proper form, then you're not ready to increase the weight. No matter how much you might want to, it's just not safe or appropriate for you at that time.
Yeah. And we see it all the time where people are doing half or partial reps, like benching or squatting, not to depth, just so that they can put more weight on the bar and impress the people in the gym.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is the scale. Now, there are some exercises where you actually want to be a 7 or 8, and some exercises that you could actually push to 9, like push to a 10. So you probably want you at a 9 or 10. What, maybe do you want to go into what those exercises would be?
Yeah, so for like the accessory muscle groups, which are your smaller muscles, you can usually do more reps with those. You can get closer to failure with those because they do recover a lot faster than the larger muscle groups. So you were mentioning that in order to grow your shoulders, you have to do a ton of work with your shoulders. Your shoulders is one of those groups that you could do more reps on in order to help develop the strength and the muscle mass that they're looking for there. And they're going to recover a little bit easier than, let's say, your quads will. So for your quads or any major muscle groups, you're going to want to stay in that 7 to 8 range. And then again, for the accessory groups, your biceps, your triceps, shoulders, things of that nature, you can go up into that 9, borderline the 10 range for those movements.
Exactly. So bigger muscle groups, stay lower on the scale because you need time to recover. You don't want to have to spend all week recovering because you blew your quads on one workout that week and they are so sore you cannot work out again for an entire week, because that's going to hold you back from growing your muscle. And refer to last week's call on that, last week's Facebook Live. And as Tiffany said, smaller muscle groups, biceps, triceps, shoulders, calves, you can work those almost to failure. They're going to recover in 24 hours, maybe 48. And then you can lift again and stimulate them again so they can continue to grow.
Yeah, I think that that's the key here, is that when you do too much too soon, you're actually slowing down your progress because you're not able to go back in and work out and stimulate your muscles for more growth. And that's how our muscles grow, is by working them and using them. They're so sore that we can't use them, then we're not doing anything but delaying the process. It's not actually helping us.
Exactly. Now, one of the benefits of using this reps in reserve or RPE scale is that it actually accommodates different rep ranges. So for example, if you were doing your set called for only 5 reps, great. That means that your 5th rep, you're probably like, all right, I had 2 more in the tank. So you could have done 7. You know, if your rep scheme calls for 10 to, let's say 10 reps, 15 reps, 20 reps, the whole idea is you could only squeeze out a couple more. So it's beautiful that way.
Yep. And that's why we also use a combination of that rep range.
Yes.
In conjunction with RIR, because we want you guys to push yourselves until you are at that I can only do 2 to 3 more rep mark. At that point, we want you to say, oh, I need to listen to my body and stop here. I know that this is an appropriate rep range for me based on the weight that I'm using. Now, keep in mind, if you go up in weight, that rep range is going to change. So if the weight goes up, the reps might go down. And that's okay, because it gives us a basic starting point to increase your strength and increase how much workload you're able to do.
Exactly. You know, when I started lifting for a good 2 years, I probably, if my program said 10 reps, I stopped at 10 reps. It did not matter if I could have done 15, because that's what the program said was 10 reps. I didn't realize like 10 reps, ideally meaning you could maybe do 2 more with good form. And A rep range is much more realistic because you have days where you're really strong, you had a good sleep, you're hydrated, you're not stressed out, you know, like everything's firing really well, you're well nourished, you go into the gym and you can do the top end of your rep scheme. So like, let's say we program 10 to 15 reps for a client, and it's like you hit 15, but the next time you do it, you hit 12 or 13 because you got a crappy night's sleep or you're starting to get a cold or whatever. So having a rep range is more realistic. And what we want our clients to do is hit the top end of that. Once they start hitting the top end of that range, increase the weight. Now, next time you increase the weight, like you said, you might go down to 8, 9, 10 reps, but you're going to work your way up again and get stronger. And as a beginner, you will be getting stronger every week. And here's a little thing, a little tip. People think that they're getting more muscle and getting really strong in the first 3 to 4 weeks of a new program. But in reality, what you're doing is you're actually creating better nervous system wiring, the mind-muscle connection, and that's what's making you stronger. And your CNS is adapting to the movement patterns. You're becoming more efficient at lifting them. You're just, maybe I'm not putting this into the best words, but most of this are neuromuscular adaptations that are taking place in the first few weeks of a training program. You're not actually, well, strength is neuromuscular, but you're not actually growing a whole bunch of muscle now, right? But you keep on lifting and you will start growing muscle.
So
and, yeah,
let me see if I can try to make that a little easier to understand for people. Basically, whenever you start a lifting program, if you have never lifted before, your muscles are not used to doing the workload. So when you start lifting, your brain is like, oh, I don't have to use my entire muscle. I'll just use part of it. So only part of your muscle fibers are engaged. As your brain's like, oh, wait, maybe I do need to move this. It starts to engage more and more of the muscle fibers that's in that specific muscle that you're working on. So even though you're not gaining muscle mass at this point, you're able to engage more of the muscle overall. So in that looks like you've gained muscle when in reality, you're just drawing on the strength that you already had and your body is learning how to use the strength you already have. Does that make sense?
yeah, it's great. You're recruiting more muscle fibers and they're firing now.
And that's why you see a
all
lot
that
of
latent
strength
potential.
gains.
Pardon me?
Yeah. I said that's why you see a lot of initial strength gains when you start a training program.
Yeah. And I think of like if you were learning how to dance, you might be super awkward at some moves first, and then you just get better with practice. You're not stronger, though, you're just learning how to move in that movement pattern better.
Yeah.
And so, you know, in a lot of strength training, which I do, I compete in bench press, is neuromuscular adaptation. The weight is increasing every week because I'm getting better at, my brain is getting better at telling these muscle fibers to fire.
Yep.
So anyway, it's a little bit off topic, but why I say this is because your rating of perceived exertion, or your RIR, will change if you keep the same weight. Let's face it, you start off with a 10-pound dumbbell. In a week or two, you can probably go to 12 pounds. In a month, you can probably go to 15 pounds, which is a 50% increase. If you're not increasing the weight, you're not going to change your physique and you're not going to get stronger. You're just going to plateau.
Yeah. And I think that segues us into another good portion to talk about. We hear a lot about 1 rep max. There's a lot of talk about 1 rep max. And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, well, I'm working at 80% of my 1 rep max, so I'm good here, right? Well, the issue is that, again, as we just said, as you're training, you're going to start engaging more muscle fibers, and maybe your initial 1 rep max is no longer what your actual 1 rep max is. So if you never change the weight that you're using based on, I'm doing 80% of my 1 rep max, then you're not challenging yourself and you're not promoting growth. So
100%.
by focusing on reps in reserve and going, wow, last week I could only do 10. I felt like after 10 reps, I could only do 2 more. This week I knocked out 10 and I'm not even feeling fatigued yet. Let me see how many, 15. Okay, now I'm starting to feel it. Okay, I can stop here. You know, by doing that, you're really going to be able to challenge yourself more to increase that growth versus saying, well, this is 80% of my 1 rep max, so I'm going to stay here forever, because that's just not realistic and it's not going to promote growth.
Just like your program says 10 reps, so you only stay at 10 reps, even if you could have done more. So it really requires paying attention to your body and then asking questions as you're lifting and how did that feel? And we recommend you keep a training notebook. I bring one into the gym. I will write down, for example, that was a 9 today. Okay, if it's a 9, I'm not going to increase my weight next week.
I've actually seen her training book before, and she puts a smiley face if it's a good day, or a frowny face if she feels like performance was not where she wanted it to be. Yeah, it's really cute. I like it.
Yeah, or if I'm feeling, I do like X's for eyes, you know, if I'm anyway. But and then I will do do an arrow up beside the weight, which notes to me next week I want to increase the weight, or I'll put a straight line if do not increase the weight. But one question about one other point about the 1 rep max is, I remember 20 years ago when I first started lifting weights, longer than that. It was very popular to have somebody do a 1 rep max in order to say, okay, well, you should probably work at it at 70 to 80% of this 1 rep max. And just like Tiffany said, in a month, your 1 rep max will probably change. So we don't really recommend figuring out your 1 rep max all the time, or lifting a 1 rep max, because your chance of injury goes up. And even in bench press competition, where I'm actually, the whole competition is how much weight can I lift in 1 rep? I used to train for 1 rep maxes. I would figure them out every month. Has my 1 rep max gone up? I don't do that now. Using the reps in reserve is the safest way to train and still see progress. So I will train with 1 or 2 reps in reserve when I'm peaking for a meet. So I never want to take it to the limit. I might do that once as a check-in to see, is my 1 rep, can I hit this on the platform come game day? Like how close, what is my 1 rep max? But other than that, you can make great progress, reduce the chance of injury, reduce the chance of overtraining, but always leaving a couple reps in reserve when you're training. In fact, that is optimal for getting stronger and growing your muscles, not training to failure.
Yep.
So I think that's about all we wanted to talk about with reps in reserve and rating of perceived exertion.
Yeah.
Any
Don't
questions?
worry, Maureen, we didn't forget about you. I know, I see you on here.
Okay, so no questions about that, folks, about reps in reserve and how to apply it?
Yeah, Patty just posted a question.
Okay.
So she said, so if we feel we can do more reps on the first set, should we do them then? Or should we wait and see how we feel on the 3rd set? Or do more reps in all sets? I have thought I can do more and do 15 first set and then maybe 8 on the 2nd set. So I think that it's okay to do more on the first set, definitely.
Well, wait, you do your first set, and as you're doing it, you're feeling like, oh gosh, I'm programmed to do 8 to 12. But this is so easy. I'm going blow past 12. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Keep going until you have, maybe if we told you to work out at a 7 or 8, till you feel like you got a 2 or 3 reps in reserve. And then the next set, increase your weight. Yep. Don't wait for your next workout. Do it in that workout.
Well, and then she says that on the next set, keeping the workout the same, she can only do maybe 8 reps. But maybe, I guess that's the question too, is to check in with yourself and ask yourself, how was your rest? How was your recovery? Did you give yourself enough time between those sets? Depending on the muscle group that you're working, depending on how heavy you're lifting, that can all depend on how long of a rest you need. Some bodybuilders rest 5 minutes between sets. It just depends on your specific body and, you know, making sure that you take the appropriate amount of time for rest.
Yeah, it's a great question, Patty. I think if you went 15 to 8, you probably didn't rest long enough. If you went 15 to 10, 11, 12, that's okay too.
Yeah.
At that, I would keep the weight the same. If you could do 15 and 15, I would definitely increase it on the 3rd set.
Yeah.
Hope that helps. All right. Any other questions?
That's it so far.
I hope, I guess, out of all this, people start learning to ask themselves, how many more reps could I have pulled off with good technique? Do I need to increase my weight? And not wait until they do that workout again, but actually make those changes dynamically right in that session.
Yeah. And as your coach, I'm never going to go, oh, you increased your weight. Why did you do that? If I look at your tracker that you send to me and I see that you went over your rep count and then the next set you increased your weight, I'm going to go, heck yeah, way to see that you could push yourself and that you could go heavier. That's amazing. So
Yeah. And I mean, it's rare when you increase the weight and now you can only pull off a quarter or half of what you were doing.
yeah.
Just increase the weight, incrementally.
Yeah.
And
Doesn't have to be
see.
a huge jump.
You might find that you're increasing the weight every set because you're like, wow, I was really holding back, So it's an experimentation. Alrighty, let's talk about core. We'll touch on that now.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, we're going to take a deeper dive into core. If you have any questions specifically you want answered in next week's Facebook Live on core, let us know. We noted one today. Do you remember what somebody asked?
Yeah, they were talking about specific movements to help with dissectus recti. So the separation that happens in the abdominals after pregnancy.
Yeah.
So I do want to say that we are not certified in that. There are specific certifications that cover dissectus recti repair. We're gonna do some research and dive into that a little bit so we can talk about it in more detail. But right now, I don't think that we have a lot that we can comment on that specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. But so stay tuned for next week. But your core is far more than your abdominal muscles. And I think a lot of people think of it's just their abs, but it includes your spine, your pelvic girdle, your abdomen, and your hip joints. And some definitions even include your lats, which is your upper back muscles, and your shoulders and your chest actually play a role in your core stability and strength. So it's a lot. Basically, if you cut off your arms and legs, you got your core, It's helpful, I think, to think about your entire trunk comprising your core muscles. And when all these muscles are aligned and working together, your core is stable and strong. And when your core is stable, your entire body benefits. You're stronger, you're more balanced, you can generate more power when needed. And that helps to prevent injuries and falls. Some powerlifters and bodybuilders have amazing core, but they do not work out their core specifically. And this is because they're lifting barbells and dumbbells and they're using breathing exercises and bracing in order to lift that weight. And as a result, their core gets stronger.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you guys have ever seen someone lift a very heavy weight and they have that belt around their back. Your core does the same thing that belt does naturally. And whenever you're lifting heavy, you have to brace your core in order to help you move that weight. So
yeah. Think about it. Actually, Chad Wesley Smith, who I took a workshop with, famous powerlifter, he talked about a can of Coke. And when the can of Coke is empty, it's very easy to crush it. And when it's full of liquid, it's much harder to crush it. And so you use some breathing and bracing techniques. So it's like you're a full can of Coke when you go to do a squat. But when your muscles are out of balance, it can lead to instability and core weakness, and that can contribute to pain, a lack of flexibility, and injuries. So I think a lot of people think I need to get a better core, but often what they just need to do is start weight training regularly, and their core will improve as a result. As I said, a lot of bodybuilders, a lot of power lifters don't even work out their core, don't even do ab exercise. Are you doing ab exercises right now, Tiffany?
I do not do ab exercises. So, and that actually is perfect timing because Patty just said, is it beneficial to do abs separately in your opinion?
Yeah.
It depends on your training program.
Yeah.
If you're doing free weights and if you're using, so free weights, dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells, things of that nature, where you have to use your core to stabilize you, then no, abdominals is not needed. But if you're doing mainly machine work, then yeah, you could benefit from a little bit of abdominal work. And this is why we do like it when our clients do more free weight movements, because there's a lot more that you can do with free weights. Whenever you're using a machine, you're limited to what that machine can do, and you're not having to use your muscles, engage them fully for that machine. Whereas whenever you're lifting a heavy weight and you're forcing your body to move that entire load, there's no levers, no levies, no pulleys, anything like that helping you with that load. It puts more work on your body.
So, I mean, some machines do work your core a little bit, but honestly, free weights are superior for that. Take an example of you've got a pair of dumbbells and you're standing and you're going to do a standing dumbbell press. Okay. You're going to embrace your core naturally in order to support that movement. But now think about it. You're sitting on a machine and you're using a shoulder exercise in order to engage your shoulders, but it's isolating your shoulders. You're sitting, you're not bracing, you're not using your abs for that. So it's a different story, right? But you can use some cable machines to do like a Pallof press, which is a great core rotation exercise. But that's doing specific core exercises on a machine. And that's a different story. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that you could actually lift free weights and still be engaging your core quite a bit. So basically, if you sit hunched over a computer for hours a day at work, it can cause your chest, your shoulder, your abdomen, your hip flexor muscles, like everything on the front, to become short, tight, and activated. And your back and your glutes, they're going to lengthen and become less active, and they start to atrophy over time. And this is a big reason why we have people with a lot of bad backs too. It's a lifestyle thing. So you can see how it wouldn't take very long for this to affect the stability and strength of your core. So how do you build a better core? Lifting free weights helps big time. But also here are 3 tips. First, become core aware. How is your core? How are you seated? What is your posture like? Check your posture several times a day. Okay. And so not just putting your shoulders back, but lifting your ribs a little bit. Try that wherever you are right now. If you're seated, I want you to think about your posture. Now just move your shoulders back a little bit. Okay. Now lift your ribs a bit, just slightly. It's different when you lift from the ribs, right? The third thing you want to do is to work on strengthening your core muscles as individual exercises on their own or just lifting weights. And we're going to talk more about this in next week's Facebook Live. If you have any specific questions about this topic, please comment below. And in the meantime, if you go to my blog at www.adelefrisell.com and do a search for the keyword core in the blog section, I have several articles on this and so just again, adelefrisell.com, look for the blog and then type in the search box core, and you're going to see an article called Getting a Little Personal with Your Core. Another one, This Assignment is a Core Game Changer. Another one, 7 Warning Signs You Have a Weak Core. Another one's called These Core Exercises Will Make Your Squat Stronger. Another one's called The Posture Depression Connection. There's more. There's a lot on my blog. So definitely have a look at that if you're interested in this topic. And we will answer more of your core questions in next week's Facebook Live.
So we do have a question that popped up just a second ago. Maureen said she's going to physical therapy for an issue in her L4 and L5, so lumbar 4 and 5, that are pinching a nerve, and they're working with her, urging her to orient her pelvis to 12 o'clock. What strength training or free weight exercises are best for that?
We're going to have to defer to her physical therapist on that.
And that's what I was going to say too, is because you are working with a physical therapist, they're going to give you the specific exercises they want you to do in order to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like a rehab situation.
Mm-hmm. And then it looks like Joan just posted one of your blog links into the comments. So check
thank you, Joan.
This
is so helpful. Appreciate it. Okay, I think that's it. It's been half an hour. We do try to keep these to half an hour or less. So next week, we're going to talk more about core. Definitely put your questions about core stuff in the comments, or questions about what we discussed today on the RPE/RIR scale and how you can apply that to your gym training to get the most effective results. All right, that's it. Thanks, Tiffany.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys, for coming on and asking your questions. We appreciate it.
Very much. We really appreciate you being here today. Okay. Have a great week.
Bye.